Okay, I just tried to record this shit and it recorded me, but not my fucking beat. Let me just. Okay, we're recording audio now. Let's go. So, first thing I always do when I'm making a beat, say I want it to be a piano beat, guitar beat, I want it to be a cello beat, I want it to be, you know what I mean? Whatever sound I'm hearing in my head for the beginning of the beat is the sound I'll pull out when I'm starting. And in this case, it was just a piano. Here's where we started. Pretty simple, right? Right here, this gray one, that's gonna be always your one, whatever it is, and you can change it by coming up here, going view, and changing your scale highlighting options. And then you just count up, not the dark ones, just the light ones here. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 4, 1. And now what you want to do from your bass notes, once you have your 4, 1 repeating, is copy it up so that you're on 4, 1 again, but higher, and then skip note, place note, skip note, place note. And that's going to give you basic chords, triads, in whatever scale it is that you've chosen. One thing I'm going to tell you is stick to these ones that have brackets in them, because this is what 90% of songs that you're listening to, probably more, are written in either minor natural or major natural. None of this shit. Now that you have your peen laid out, which this is actually a free piano from Flex, which if you have FL Studio, you should already have. And if you don't, or you don't have FL Studio, Upright Piano and Sound Paint are great free pianos that you can get. After I did that, I got my piano chords, I laid them out like this, and then you want to humanize them, which is as simple as hitting Control A and then Alt R to randomize the notes at the velocities down here, which you saw, and then Alt S and strumming them so that they don't each play at the same time, which is this little increase you see right here. So it's that opposed to this. And then what I did was I just played around with a couple of the notes moving around in the chords, which is, and you can see that I'm not varying from the chord progression more than a semitone, which adds tension to your beat, right? So I took these notes and I just chopped them up how I heard them. And then from there, one of the only plugins that I normally add when I'm starting my beats, which is halftime. And if you don't have this, another good option for free is gross beat. So you can change up here in presets. I'm into momentary and half speed, and that's going to do essentially the same as this plugin halftime does, but without it has less parameters you can adjust, but it still works great. I've used it lots. Don't feel bad because you're using that instead of this. And I was happy with that, right? And I didn't add any actual effects that are doing anything other than playing with the time and intern the pitch, but that's all it's doing, you know? I haven't added reverb, no echoes, no nothing. And I feel like that's where people get caught, is they make something similar to this where they like it and they go, oh, let me make a beat. This sounds good. Don't get me wrong, it sounds great. But there's nothing there. There's no... You couldn't use that to make a beat because the energy never increases. And what people will do is they'll take this and then they'll try and turn this piano into something that's more exciting using effects, which you can do, but you don't need to do, and it's just going to frustrate you more than it helps you, in my opinion. So what I did next was I laid down this. And what I do when I'm making beats, I don't know if this is stupid or if anybody else does this, I'll lay down something similar to the vibe I want to work in today, and then I'll shut my eyes and I'll just listen to it a few times. Unless you have a dead ass fucking imagination, then I'm sorry to hear that. But because you've listened to music everybody's listened to music when they were little, and most music you listen to is in key. So the sounds that are going to be popping into your head when you're listening to your melody will also normally be, you know what I mean? They'll fit in the same key that you're trying to work in. After I added added this pad, which also sounds like a vocal, but it's a pad. And it's just copying the bass notes from the progression before. And then if I highlight these and bring them down an octave, it's just doubled. There's nothing fancy going on. And now, instead of having this, we have this. And now you'll actually have pieces to play around with when you're trying to make your chorus sound different from your verse, or your intro sound different from any other part of your beat. It's not all just going to be the same piano playing, smacking your head the entire time. Add some flavor, not have a fucking Wonder Bread plain ass beat, you know? See, instantly that sounds better than just having the same piano all the way through, like I've been saying the whole time. That sounds immensely better than just this. Fuck me, right? First thing I'll always add is either a hi-hat or a kick, or what I should say is both. Not a kick, sorry, a hi-hat and a snare. When you're making a song, there's certain things that can change frequently throughout the music without throwing off your ear, and then there's things that it's pretty universal where they stay. And your snare is one of them, and your hi-hat is, you have a little more leeway with your hi-hats than you do with your snares. But what you're going to want to do is lay down this every time. Here, every second black note, or every second first gray, you know what I mean? You can see what I'm saying on the screen clearly. You know, like it doesn't sound bad because it's still in a spot that makes sense. It just sounds bad for the fact that it's too fast for this particular beat. That's why we have it here. And your hi-hats, every 2 steps. You don't need to click all of them in. You can again come right here. You can just click on your hi-hat and hit fill each 2 steps, which is what I did. But I added these, which you can hear. Hold Control, or whatever key it is on MacBook, and then you're going to hit hold Alt and tap U, and then this knob is going to determine how chopped up it is, and it's not going to be random, it's going to stay quantized. And then if you listen to that with the snares, you'll notice something. A very safe place to put them is either right before or right after your snare. So either the very last note on your roll is basically touching the snare, or the very first note on your roll is basically touching your snare. And that's going to sound good every time. Again, none of this shit is shit you need to be doing every time. It's just a good way to, you can lay it down and start somewhere. And now that you've got this, which is, your melody is completely on you, but those are going to be your drums that are going to set you up for success. Because the other drums, like your open hats, your perks, your kicks, your 808s, you have a lot more room to play with them. So if you have this down, it's easier to know where your kick should go. If you start with your kicks, you're going to make a kick pattern that sounds good, and then you're going to realize that your snare and your kick are in the same place and it sounds like dookie. So don't put yourself in a corner right as soon as you start your beat. And then you can play around, and add other things. Right, here's a kick and a open hat that I added. And then you can add things like your 808s and your bass line. But for me, that's a whole different video, because if you start and do this, if you can't do this every single time first, you're not ready to program 808s. And that's just, which doesn't mean you shouldn't, because the only way to learn is fucking around with your 808s. But get this shit down and subscribe so you can learn more and better and faster.